We wanted to jump into an overview of BindPlane and then follow that up quickly with a couple of demos. First of BindPlane and then of VMware. So as I mentioned, BindPlane is monitoring integration as a service. So this is a SaaS solution designed to support all of your data center technologies through a single solution, and then send that data along to any SaaS monitoring platform that you have configured that you're using inside of your environment. It takes any of the 150 integrations that we have already developed, and any of those are available and can be used with your monitoring platforms. What we found is that if you have a large environment, so let's say you have hundreds of technologies inside of your environment, which is very common for a large company, and you have, say, 2 or more monitoring solutions that you want to use, it can be extremely difficult to manage that, not just the initial installation of all those integrations, but also the lifecycle management. So how do you maintain these integrations over time across hundreds or thousands of systems? How do you integrate with multiple platforms? And for us, BindPlane is the solution to that. Let me go switch over to a demo here. Okay, able to see that all right? So this is BindPlane. I'll walk through a couple of the components here, but this is an overview page, and it shows you what you're looking at here is 3 different data centers. There's an AWS data center. There is an on-prem data center that we have locally. And then on the other end, there's an Azure data center. And each one of these has a single collector located in that. So it's a single application that we install. And then they are configured with a variety of different technologies. So in this case, in AWS, obviously the majority of those are AWS technologies. For our on-prem solution, you can see that there are database technologies, there's hardware, and then for Azure, it's primarily Azure technologies, also some databases, Kubernetes as well. And then what you're seeing is all the data is being collected and sent through the BindPlane service, so that's what we're running. And then it's passed along to the configured, what we call destinations. So these are multiple monitoring platforms. One, Microsoft OMS. It's a monitoring solution inside of Microsoft Azure. One, New Relic, which I know many folks are familiar with. And let me just show you, give you a quick demo of how this works. So it starts with a collector. Going back in. I have 3 collectors I already showed you, 1 for each data center. What I'm going to do is install another collector locally. And this will take a second, so it'll take a second to download. So we'll jump back and we'll talk through. But what's happening here is this is automatically reaching out, grabbing our default collector. It's downloading it, it's installing it. It'll install on any system. So whether it's it's a Linux system, Windows system, Mac is primarily just for testing and things like this. Or if you're running on AWS or another platform, we can automatically deploy it with a template. If we go back, while it's installing, I can show you the sources that we have available. These are configured, but we also have all the available sources. And this is what I've mentioned a few times, the 150 different sources that are available through BindPlane. We have the vast majority of AWS technologies, Google Cloud, Azure, but then we also have on-prem solutions. So things like for compute, we have Dell EMC compute, we have Lenovo, Nutanix, HP, Cisco, many others. We have databases, a wide range of enterprise and open source databases, load balancers, networks, and storage. And all of those can be configured on any of these collectors that were, anything that can be reached that has network access to that connector, that collector.
In the collector screen, I saw CloudFormation. Is that a deployment template for a CloudFormation, in AWS collector?
Yes, exactly. So it's just a simplified version. If I was to click this and I can choose a region that I want that to be deployed in, and then click a button, and it will automatically pull up a CloudFormation template for you.
So what does it actually deploy? A load balanced, a two instance based?
So it's a single instance, but what we do is we allow you to group collectors together. So if you deployed 2 of those, you can go into the UI here, choose a collector, and in this case, this is already a group, so I can just click Add Collector and bundle as many of those together as I want. So I can put 5 collectors inside of a group, and those are now become high availability and distributed load for all of your collectors. So each collector has a certain amount that it can handle. You can see most of these are single, and they have dozens, if not hundreds, of different integrations installed. But once you get to a certain point, you start to distribute that into multiples.
Right. So you don't go bigger, you just scale out basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or if you intend to do that high availability, then you have 2 of those.
Right.
Right from the start, right?
Yes.
Do you have a similar thing for Azure or some other clouds as well?
It's on the way, but it's not there yet. Yes.
Currently, you just have AWS.
Right, but Azure and GCP will be out shortly.
Right. Okay.
What you could also install, because if you ran a Linux image on Azure, you could still install our collectors
Yes.
there.
Oh, right. Okay.
So all of them, so
workaround.
folks install them on any platform. We're just making it as easy as possible. So we've got the AWS CloudFormation template. We have a containerized, a Docker container that'll be out shortly, and then GCP and Azure templates as well soon.
Most of them come from customer requests, right? So a customer wants something special.
Yes.
We make it for them.
Yes, that's how we determine our roadmap for sure. And so, we get feedback all over the place for connectors, for cloud support, for integrations. That all feeds into this. So this installation finished here. It is now running, and it should show up. And here is a new collector. So there we go. So what happened was I installed this collector. It then called out to BindPlane, registered itself, and now it's available to be used within my environment. So I can now do something like if I want to add a source. Take a look at this. I have a Postgres database running on my laptop. So I will try to monitor Postgres database. All right, and then what we do is, so I'm doing this all from the web UI. So what's happening is I build this configuration. As soon as I hit test connection, when I installed that collector, it didn't have any integrations. So it's a collector with nothing installed. As soon as I hit test connection, it downloads the latest version of our Postgres integration. It then pushes this configuration down. And we'll attempt to make a connection. So before we save it, right, I know that it now connects. It's able to gather all the data. And as soon as I hit add, this is now going to be available, and it's going to show up in our overview in just a second. There we go. So now we have a Postgres database running. I'm monitoring on my laptop. It's now being sent to BindPlane, and that data is going to both of those destinations that I have configured.
So you can set policy and monitoring patterns from BindPlane and push out to the child?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and in fact, that's a huge part of the benefit of this is for each one of these, you see, we have 100 or so integrations here. Those in the past would mean that you have 100 different agents installed somewhere that you then have to manage, that you have to configure with a JSON file or whatever on the system. In this case, we can update them remotely. You can turn on automatic updates. So every time Blue Medora releases a new Postgres database, it'll automatically download it and update. The collectors will update on their own, and all the configuration can be pushed as opposed to configured locally.
Are there any plans to make BindPlane on-site?
It's something that we've seriously considered. And just to give you a little bit more of the underpinnings of it, we've designed it for it to be possible to do that from the beginning. So we use a Kubernetes environment that allows it to port from one location to another. So certainly there's been some interest.
Because I can see this being incredibly, in the enterprises, agent proliferation is massive.
Right.
Being able to solve that problem on-site without having to use a cloud would be a godsend.
Is there a particular service mesh that you guys are using, or
Particular what?
Service mesh that you guys are using on the side?
So this is actually all running on AWS for this component. So, and then just briefly to show you actually where the data goes. Now I'm jumping into New Relic. So this is just a standard New Relic console. Very quickly, you see all the data that we have available. So all of those integrations are now available within New Relic. If I wanted to go down and look at, let's say, VMware virtual machines, maybe we'll look at the guest OS. All right, so now I've just taken all the data that we're monitoring, we pushed it over to New Relic, and now I'm looking at the specific guest OSs. But this is just to show you a simple example. All the data that you have is now available in a new platform. And we go further with these by showing we actually build on top of this applications, what they call apps. And this is just ways to visualize these components. So this is one for Oracle. If we jump back, I can show you that we had the Postgres database that we set up and that I had sending data. Now you see this localhost Postgres database is available. So the one I just did a minute ago is now sending data into New Relic.
What are the costs in the resources?
Within New Relic or for like the collector itself?
Collector.
It's fairly low. These are not highly resource intensive. I mean, that's going to scale depending on how many integrations you have on it. But like I said, usually we scale out, keep them relatively small. You're talking about a couple of gigs of memory on something and low CPU usage. So
I've seen monitoring system kill applications. So.
Okay. That's so, and that's one of the things. I think I was answering a different question. If you're talking about the load that's actually put on the application itself, so if we're looking at the load on a Postgres database, we keep it minimal, and because we're not on the box itself, it reduces the actual usage of system resources. So we're going remotely through API calls. And of course, it's something that it's critical in monitoring to watch what types of API calls we're making, what the load is on those integrations or on those systems.
How is this all licensed?
So this is a traditional SaaS license, so it's subscription model. We do an initial, it is per metric, so we do a model of a bucket of metrics that you can have sent, and then it's discounted very heavily for additional platforms. So if you're doing this for 3 platforms, you're not paying 3 times the price of metrics.
Is this sold through the partner channel or direct? What's your sales model?
So this is currently direct, and then we're partnering with platforms to simplify that as much as possible.
So will this be added to the VMware VCPP program, much like the management packs are for VR Ops? Or is this intentionally separated out to a separate model?
I can't answer that yet. I can tell you that we're moving towards that or trying to make it as simple as possible.